AITA for moving on after my girlfriend threw the ring and left with another guy? She wanted a truly good man, but she traded my impromptu dinners for resorts and my hugs for expensive suits. And while she showed off her new boyfriend like a trophy, I just watched in silence, because life has a way of coming full circle. And when it did, she was the one who showed up at my company, begging for a second chance. I'm 29, and I met my ex-girlfriend, Amber, who's now 26, in a way that seems straight out of a quirky comedy. It was 2 a.m., and I was in the university library, staring blankly after programming for 12 hours straight. That's when a girl with hair that smelled amazing and a coffee in her hand tripped and spilled the entire latte on my laptop. Anyone else would have exploded, but I just said, well, at least now my code has some flavor. Instead of running away, she laughed. And that's how it all began. We were together for 4 years, the last 8 months of which we were engaged. For years of believing we had something real. I proposed with a ring I'd saved up for 6 months. She accepted. She cried with happiness and posted photos on social media with captions saying it was forever. She used to come to my third-floor walk-up apartment, a small place, about 650 square feet. The building had character, which is a nice way of saying everything was old and broken, and the landlord didn't care, but Amber seemed to love it. We decorated the place with lights from a discount store, posters I'd collected over the years, and of course, my cat, Milo. Yes, the name was intentional. He was a rescued stray with an annoying habit of knocking over everything he saw, but every night he'd sleep curled up between us. Amber said she was more of a dog person, but I'd catch her talking to Milo when she thought no one was listening. Her family, on the other hand, never fully accepted me. They didn't say it outright, but you could feel it. The mother would shoot me looks of disdain, and the father would always ask about my little computer project in that tone you use for a child's imaginary friend. Family gatherings felt like a play where I was both the audience and the butt of the jokes. Interestingly, back then, Amber was different. She'd mock her parents' elitist world. She claimed she didn't care about money or status. We'd eat Chinese food sitting on my futon, watching shows on a computer that took 5 minutes to boot up. She said none of that mattered, but in the end, they were all just empty words. The first crack in our relationship appeared 6 months before the end. A friend from college was getting married. I saved for months to rent a decent tuxedo and buy a wedding gift. I thought it would be fun, like a trial run for our own celebration, but when we got to the party, I realized I was in another world. There were ice sculptures, a live orchestra, champagne that cost more than my month's groceries. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, and I felt completely out of place. Amber, however, was right at home. She chatted with former classmates about their jobs at big corporations, luxurious apartments, and vacations abroad. I just held a drink, trying to join conversations that would die down the moment I said I worked at a startup. Even though I'd asked not to sit with her college friends, we ended up at a table with her parents' friends, wealthy older people who spent the entire dinner talking about investments and properties. I tried to explain my project in simple terms, but one of them laughed and said, "Still playing with computers. It's time you got a real job, especially now that you're getting married. You need to grow up." The worst part was that Amber didn't defend me. She just looked embarrassed and changed the subject. In the car, when I brought it up, she said I was being too sensitive and should just take it easy. The next sign came weeks later. Her mother invited me for coffee, just the two of us. We went to a fancy coffee shop in her neighborhood, where a coffee cost $8 and everyone seemed to be closing million-dollar deals. She arrived late, dressed in designer clothes, offered no apology, and got straight to the point. She said she'd been thinking about my situation, as if my life were a problem to be solved. She pulled a folder from her purse with job listings. They were administrative positions at banks and insurance companies, jobs that, frankly, would kill any passion I had. "These are real careers," she said, sliding the papers toward me, "with benefits, a retirement plan, and stability." She talked about starting from the bottom, like her eldest son had. I was speechless. She wanted me to give up my dream to become an insurance adjuster. She looked at me like I was a stubborn child refusing to eat his vegetables. You have to be realistic. Amber needs security, not dreams. The conversation went downhill fast. Phrases like, "when you grow up," and "she needs a provider, not a dreamer," made me feel like trash. The worst part is that when I told Amber everything, She wasn't angry or surprised. She just said, "She's doing it for your own good. Couldn't you at least look at those offers as a plan B?" I knew then that everything was tainted. The beginning of the end was a dinner she described as casual, just family. She asked me to wear a blazer. When I arrived at her house, or rather, her family's mansion, I realized it was anything but intimate. The driveway was filled with luxury cars. My old Honda Civic, with its dented bumper and a check engine light that had been on for years, looked like a joke in the middle of that scene. And it wasn't just family. Amber's father had invited business partners and their sons, guys who looked like they'd stepped out of a LinkedIn commercial, educated at top universities, with internships at major firms, sons of people who play golf with politicians, the kind of people who casually use summer as a verb. The conversations seemed rehearsed: investments, European vacations, properties. And there I was, remembering that my biggest recent accomplishment was buying name-brand cereal instead of the generic version. That's when the targeted questions began. It all felt orchestrated with surgical precision. "So, still working on that little tech project?" Amber's father asked with a dismissive smile. "It's a startup," I corrected, trying not to sound defensive. "We're still in the early stages, but we're making strong progress." I didn't mention that our last meeting with investors had been a disaster, or that my partner, Julian, and I had been pulling 80-hour weeks trying to fix a bug that made the prototype crash whenever someone uploaded a file larger than 50 megabytes. Technically, the project was a ticking time bomb. Financially, we were on the brink. One of Amber's father's friends, a tan guy with a perfect smile, even in the middle of February, let out a little laugh as if I'd just said the earth was flat. "Tech is so unstable these days. Are you sure it's worth it? Maybe it wouldn't hurt to consider a plan B." The condescension dripped like melted butter, but what hurt most was Amber's silence. In the past, she would have jumped into the conversation, talked about how passionate I was about my work, how much she believed in what we were building. But this time, she said nothing. And that's when he appeared. Amber's mother introduced him as if she were presenting an envoy from heaven. His name was Blake, recently promoted to junior partner at a prestigious corporate law firm, a Princeton grad with a postgraduate law degree, a model of success. Blake was everything I wasn't: tall, elegant, in a bespoke suit, and probably had never had to check his bank balance before buying a coffee. He spoke about his latest bonus as if he were discussing the weather. He talked about his new apartment in the city's upscale neighborhood, his 5-year plan to become a senior partner. And Amber looked at him as if she were hypnotized. She asked him questions, laughed at his bad jokes, and showed more interest in Blake's job that night than she had in mine during our entire time together. Each question from her was like a dagger. I barely spoke that night. Every time I tried to join the conversation, they'd let me talk for a few seconds before shifting the focus back to Blake's achievements or some other success story that wasn't mine. I watched, stunned, as the Amber I knew vanished. The woman who used to laugh at the arrogance of others now seemed to be becoming one of them. When we got back to my apartment, she was different. She complained about the broken elevator that had been out of service for months. She grimaced when Milo jumped on the bed, the same cat she used to claim she adored. She commented on how small the bathroom was, as if seeing it for the first time. In that moment, I knew something had broken. I just didn't know how quickly it would become official. A week later, she showed up at my door after work. She was still in her office clothes. She sat at the little IKEA table where we had shared so many nights, impromptu dinners, games with friends, talks about the future. "We need to talk." I immediately knew where this was going. I've been thinking a lot about us, about what I want, about what I need. I already knew the direction this was headed, but I let her speak. "I love you, but I need stability. I can't keep waiting for you to get on your feet. My family made me see that I need someone who's already there. Someone who can offer me the life I deserve." "Someone like Blake?" I asked, cutting to the chase. She didn't even feign surprise. "Yes, someone like him." And then, finally, she stopped pretending. "I tried to adapt," she said, looking around my apartment with disdain, as if every corner were proof of my failure. "I really tried, but I can't keep pretending this is the life I want. Living in a building that's falling apart, worrying about money, dating someone who can't even take me out to a decent dinner. The same person who claimed to love our simple nights, who swore that material things didn't matter. You're 29, and you're still playing with computers like you're 19. Blake takes me to restaurants where the waiters know his name. He doesn't have to save for months to buy a decent ring. That line was a punch to the gut. I had worked double shifts for 6 months to buy that ring. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, and I was proud of it. So, is that what you've thought of me this whole time? For years together, and you're only saying this now. Amber, why did you waste so much time? Then, she took a deep breath, as if she were tired of me. I gave you 4 years to change, to become someone worthwhile, but you're still the same broke dreamer I met in college, just older now, and that's pathetic. The argument escalated. The tension exploded until she did something I'll never forget. She ripped the ring off her finger and threw it at me. It hit my chest and fell to the floor. "Take your cheap ring," she said with contempt. "Blake's already talking about getting me a real one, from Tiffany's. Not this bargain bin piece of junk." I looked at the ring on the floor. The same one she had received while crying with joy. The same one that symbolized everything I dreamed of building with her. You know what's pathetic, Amber? Pretending to love someone, while deep down you're just waiting for them to turn into someone else. Pretending you don't care about superficial things when you can't even admit who you really are from the start. She turned red with anger. At least I'm not wasting my life chasing impossible dreams. You're right. I picked the ring up off the floor. You're not wasting your life. You're wasting mine. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and before leaving, delivered the final blow. Blake's picking me up at 8. She wanted me to know she was going straight from ending our engagement to a date with her upgrade. Good for you too, I said, opening the door. I wish you all the happiness in the world. 2 days later, she was Instagram official with Blake. There they were, at a luxury resort in matching outfits, his arm around her waist. She was smiling as if everything were exactly where it should be. The photo caption, "Found my forever." Meanwhile, I was still sleeping on the side of the bed we used to share. I was still finding her hair ties in the most random corners. Half of her stuff was still in my apartment because she hadn't even found the time to pick it up. And the ring sat on my nightstand, a daily reminder of how naive I'd been to believe in forever. I'd like to say I channeled all that pain into success, that I built a multi-million-dollar company and came out on top with grit and focus, but that only happens in the movies. Real life is messy, more chaotic. I fell apart. Our startup folded a month after the breakup. The investors pulled out after our prototype failed miserably during the presentation that was supposed to be our big launch. The app crashed 3 times in the first 5 minutes, and when it finally worked, it was so slow that the audience started checking their phones, bored. 2 weeks later, Caleb, my partner and co-founder, took a job at Microsoft. I don't blame him. He had student loans to pay off and a girlfriend who, unlike mine, supported his career. I was left alone, with no company, no money, rent I could no longer afford, and watching my last few dollars evaporate faster than free food at a college event. I had to give up the apartment. It was my friend Ethan who saved me. We met freshman year of college. He never really understood what I saw in Amber, but he always had my back. His apartment was even smaller than mine, a studio where the living room was also the office, but without me even asking, he cleared out half his closet and offered me the spare room for me and Milo. I remember the look on his face when I showed up with my entire life in trash bags. "She really told you the ring was cheap?" he said, with a mix of indignation and pity. "That ring actually cost more than his car." Okay, his car was a piece of junk, but still, that was his way of showing support, a true friend. Meanwhile, Amber's new fairy tale life was laid out across social media like a perfect storefront display. Vacations in places I only knew from movies, dinners at restaurants that don't even list prices on the menu. Every post felt like a direct message. This is what I deserve, something you could never give me. But the lowest blow came when I ran into Amber and Blake by chance. It was at a coffee shop downtown. I was picking up an order for Uber Eats. Yes, that was the difference between our lives at that moment. My car's air conditioning had been broken for 3 months. With the windows down in the nearly 95-degree heat, I was sweating through the few clean clothes I had left. I'd been on the road for over 10 hours and still had several deliveries to go to meet my daily goal. And there they were, sitting outside the cafe, looking like they'd stepped out of a catalog for the perfect life. Amber had a new haircut, the kind that looks effortless but costs a fortune and hours at a salon. Blake wore sunglasses that were probably worth more than my entire outfit. They were laughing, holding hands, looking like a commercial couple. Blake saw me first. "Look who's still delivering food," he said loudly with a venomous smile, just loud enough for everyone to hear. It wasn't an accident. He was enjoying humiliating me. Amber looked up and saw me standing there in my wrinkled Uber Eats t-shirt, holding a bag of food that, ironically, cost more than what I had spent on myself all week. For a split second, I swear I saw something in her face. Hesitation, maybe regret, I don't know. But then she smiled. That condescending smirk suffocated me. I didn't say a word. I took the bag and turned around. As I walked away, I heard Blake's voice. "I think we dodged a bullet there," followed immediately by Amber's laughter. That moment broke me. The suffocating heat, the sweat sticking to my skin, the laughter of the person who was once my world. That was the last time I let anyone treat me like a failure. That night, I went back to Ethan's apartment, deleted all my social media accounts, and told him what happened. His response: "That guy looks like he thinks mayonnaise is spicy." Then, laughing, he added, "It's time you showed them how the real world works." That's when my transformation began. I cut out everything that was dragging me down: social media, distractions, self-pity, and toxic people. I went into full-on rebuild mode, as if my life depended on it. Sleep became a luxury. 4 hours a night, if that. During the day, I made deliveries. At night, I worked stocking shelves at a grocery store, and every free second was dedicated to rebuilding my startup from scratch, but this time, intelligently. No more empty speeches, no more half-baked ideas to attract investors. I learned to work with what I had, to build something real before asking anyone for money. I also learned not to trust just anyone. My circle shrank to Ethan and 2 other friends who had proven they were with me when everything fell apart. Ethan was key. He would bring me coffee in the middle of the night while I coded. He made sure I ate something other than protein bars and never once complained that his living room looked like a war room. He even helped me land my first corporate clients through his contacts. He never asked for anything in return. He just wanted to see me succeed. For 2 years, I was off Amber's radar. I didn't know what she was doing or who she was with. And to be honest, I stopped caring. While she lived her perfect life with Blake, I worked harder than I ever imagined possible. The new idea for the company came directly from the previous failure. Instead of trying to create another visionary consumer app, I focused on something solid: B2B software, specifically AI-powered contract analysis tools for law firms. Ethan's reaction was epic. "So, basically, you're creating a program that replaces lawyers. You're going to save the world and get revenge at the same time." Comic book villain level. It was an unglamorous project, nothing flashy to show off on social media, but it solved a real problem. I had experienced it myself trying to understand contracts when I started my first company. Small firms were drowning in bureaucracy. Our system could read and flag critical clauses in seconds, and best of all, people were willing to pay for it. Everything changed suddenly. A small article in a trade magazine, a satisfied client who posted a review, and word of mouth did the rest. Soon, clients started coming to us. My team was extraordinary, committed people who believed in the vision as much as I did. They became my family. Even Caleb resurfaced during that phase, wanting to come back. He said Microsoft was fine, but he missed the energy of a startup. I told him our team was full, not out of spite, but because my current team was solid and loyal. Within a few months, the growth was exponential. We closed a deal with one of the top 5 largest law firms in the country. That brought in more contracts, more prestige, more investors. The company that started in a living room now had offices in London and Singapore. We were expanding globally, revolutionizing an industry that hadn't changed in decades. And the irony, the biggest disruption we caused was in corporate law, Blake's exact sector. Our tools were automating the tasks of junior lawyers, the very tasks that had propelled his career. When I realized this, Ethan nearly choked on his coffee from laughing so hard. "Are you telling me your company is putting elite lawyers like that clown out of a job? And he doesn't even know it." The first time I saw Amber again was at an industry conference, but not as an attendee. This time, I was the keynote speaker. A year earlier, I wouldn't have even been able to afford a ticket. Now I was on the main stage, speaking about how artificial intelligence was transforming the legal sector to an audience full of investors, and high-level executives. After the presentation, while I was greeting people interested in doing business, I recognized Amber's parents across the room. Their faces said it all. Amber's mother froze with a champagne flute in midair, and her father, the same man who had mocked my project at one of those dinners, just gave a slow, deliberate nod, one heavy with respect. And then I saw her, Amber. She was standing motionless, staring at me as if she'd seen a ghost. She was still beautiful, yes, but she no longer projected that rehearsed confidence from her social media. Something in her had been extinguished. We didn't exchange words, didn't even try to get closer, but I clearly saw the exact moment she realized who I was now. The man she had left for being a failure was now more successful than anyone in her social circle. I remember the text I sent Ethan afterward. She had the look of someone who just realized they fumbled the opportunity of a lifetime. Please tell me I'm right. From that night on, things started moving quickly. In certain circles, news travels fast, especially when someone goes from nothing to success. Weeks after the conference, I started receiving invitations to events I didn't even know existed. One came directly from Amber's father. He invited me personally. I accepted, not because I was seeking his approval, but because I knew exactly what they wanted, to associate themselves with my success. I arrived late on purpose. When I walked in, I saw them immediately, Amber and Blake. He looked exhausted, tense, with the expression of someone who knows their world is collapsing but has no idea how to stop it. He was clinging to his phone like a life raft. The firm where he worked was losing clients at an alarming rate, precisely because of companies like mine. Traditional law offices couldn't compete with the efficiency of artificial intelligence. The old model was dying, and those who didn't adapt were being left behind. Maybe Blake didn't know yet that I was the source of his collapse, but he was already feeling the effects. Amber, however, knew perfectly well. When our eyes met, I saw the same expression from the conference, but amplified. Regret, pure and undeniable. A week later, she sent me a text. I had deleted her number long ago, but the message came through anyway. Hey, it's been a while. I was wondering if we could talk. Just talk. I didn't reply. Then she did something even more desperate. She showed up at my office. It was late, and the team had already gone home. I was finishing up some emails when security called to tell me a woman was asking to see me. He didn't need to describe her. I debated whether to have her escorted out or let her come up. I decided to let her come up. This was the moment that, without knowing it, I had been preparing for since the day she left. She walked in hesitantly, looking at the modern furniture, the awards on the walls, all so different from the small apartment we once shared. The confidence she used to exude was gone. In its place was a nervous tension I had never seen in her. "Hi," she said with a sad smile. "It's been a while." I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and didn't answer. I just watched as she shifted uncomfortably in front of my desk. She took a deep breath. I was wrong about everything. I listened to my family, and I destroyed what we had. She bit her lip, waiting for a reaction. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Do you miss what we were?" I nodded slightly, as if considering it, and then asked, "Do you miss me, or do you miss what I am now?" She nodded, a spark of hope in her eyes. "I know I hurt you, but maybe we could try again." I stayed silent for a few seconds and then let out a laugh, not a sarcastic or bitter one. It was just funny. Start over? Our relationship ended the day you decided they were worth more than me. She looked away, hurt. You didn't want me when I had nothing. You didn't trust me when I needed it most. You left me for someone with more money and called me a failure. But now that things have changed, now you want to come back. Every word seemed to land like a punch. I stood up slowly, calmly buttoning my jacket. "Amber, I don't think about you anymore. I don't miss you. And I can assure you, I don't need you." At that exact moment, my office door opened. It was Haley, my girlfriend, a brilliant product designer I met at a conference when my company was still running out of Ethan's apartment. A smart, strong, beautiful woman, and the complete opposite of Amber's superficial image. Amber turned pale. I turned to Haley and smiled warmly. Then I looked back at Amber. I found someone who's on my level. It turns out, it wasn't you. I walked Amber to the elevator and watched the doors close on her. I didn't feel elation or revenge, just peace. The tranquility of closing a chapter that should have ended years ago. But that wasn't the end. It was just the first move in a much larger game. A few weeks later, The rumors started to circulate. Blake's law firm was on the verge of collapse. Our AI-based system was replacing traditional legal services at a terrifying speed. We were faster, cheaper, and more efficient. We did in minutes what they billed for by the hour. The senior partners were losing control, and instead of adapting, they made desperate decisions, which only made things worse. I heard from industry contacts that Blake was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, working over 90 hours a week, screaming at his colleagues, and desperately trying to hold on to his biggest clients. As always, Ethan had the perfect line. So the guy who made fun of you for playing with computers is now being destroyed by them. Poetic. Investors started jumping ship. They were calling Blake's firm a dinosaur unable to survive in the modern market. And the best part, he still didn't know I was the one responsible for its downfall. While Blake was falling apart, Amber's parents went into damage control mode. The same people who had treated me like a failure unworthy of their daughter for years were now trying to get back in touch. The mother sent polite emails congratulating me on my incredible achievements. The father started talking about me in interviews, calling me one of the most promising entrepreneurs of the decade. They started inviting me to events disguised as networking. I didn't respond to anything until Amber's father called me personally. I answered out of sheer curiosity. His tone was warm, almost fatherly. Son, we should talk business, partnerships, put the past behind us. You know, I let him talk about synergy, collaboration, a future together, but I already knew what he was getting at. Look, I know Amber made a mistake. We all know that, but she hasn't been doing well. Maybe if you two just. I hung up before he could finish the sentence. There was no remorse, no apology, just a dirty play to try and save face. That was the last time I answered any of their calls, but the best was yet to come. The moment Blake finally understood who was behind his fall was impeccable. I was on a panel at another conference. The topic was the future of AI in the legal sector. Midway through the discussion, the CEO of a major firm publicly praised my company. These guys are revolutionizing the market. Even the legacy firms are struggling to keep up. The camera panned to the audience, and there was Blake, pale-faced, eyes wide with a look of pure shock and recognition. In that instant, he understood. I wasn't just his ex's failed ex-boyfriend. I was the man who was dismantling his career, piece by piece. He had a meltdown that very night. I got a text from a mutual acquaintance. Dude, Blake lost it in a partners meeting. You have to hear this. During a strategy session, one of the partners mentioned my company as the biggest competitive threat they needed to overcome. Blake lost control. He screamed that I was just lucky, a fraud, that my company would fail, that traditional law would always prevail. The problem was, no one in the room believed him anymore. They all looked at him like he had lost his mind. That's when they realized he wasn't the future anymore. That spot was now mine. But there was still one last play. Months later, my company was about to close its most audacious acquisition yet. A smaller but heavyweight law firm, a direct competitor to Blake's practice. It wasn't just a business transaction, it was checkmate. After the deal closed, we started poaching Blake's firm's biggest clients. In less than 6 months, his practice had to merge with a larger company to avoid disappearing entirely. Blake went from junior partner to a regular employee, likely doing the same basic work he had once bragged about escaping years ago. The golden boy, the guy who had everything handed to him, was now just another cog in the machine, trying to survive in an industry that no longer had a place for him. But the story wasn't over. 3 weeks after his firm's official merger, Amber showed up at my company again. But this time, she was a different person. This wasn't the confident, radiant woman I once knew. What I saw before me was a portrait of pure desperation. It was a Friday afternoon, around 7 p.m. Most of the team had already left for the weekend, but I stayed behind to review some contracts. That's when I got a call from security. He sounded hesitant. Sir, there's a woman here. She's a little upset. She says she needs to speak with you urgently. Send her up, I replied. I already had a good idea who it was. When the elevator doors opened, I almost didn't recognize her. She was no longer the elegant, well-dressed woman from before. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was smeared as if she'd been crying, and she was wearing jeans and a wrinkled sweater. I had never seen her look so disheveled, not even in our simplest days. Thank God you're here, she said, walking in without even asking for permission. I called you. I texted you. Why won't you answer me? I remained seated, calm. Why? We have nothing left to talk about, Amber. Yes, we do, she yelled, almost desperately. I broke up with Blake. It's over. He lost everything, and he blamed me for it. He said it was all because I left you, that I ruined our lives. She paced back and forth in my office, agitated. Good for you, I replied coldly. She stopped and stared at me. You don't get it. I'm free now. We can start over. I almost laughed. Start over? I made a mistake. The biggest one of my life. I never should have left you. You were right all along. My family, Blake, all of it. But I'm here now, and I'm choosing you. She approached my desk, her eyes filled with tears. I know you still love me. What we had was real. True love doesn't just disappear. I stood up calmly. You're right. True love doesn't disappear. But what we had wasn't it. Her face crumpled. That's not true. You left me the second something better came along. That's not love. It's convenience. You traded me for someone with more money. You call me a failure. That's not love, Amber. She began to sob uncontrollably. Please, I'm begging you. I have nothing left. Even my parents won't speak to me. You're all I have left. You are nothing to me, I replied, without emotion. Besides, I'm with someone else. You need to move on. She grabbed my arm as if it were her last lifeline. I was wrong about the ring. It was beautiful. I was just scared. I firmly pulled my arm away. No, but she persisted. I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll work wherever I need to. Just give me another chance. I love you. I've always loved you. No, Amber. Leave. You don't understand. It was just a mistake. Just one. You can't punish me forever. I picked up the phone and called security. What are you doing? Don't call security. She tried to stop it, moving toward the desk, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. Don't you dare. I pushed her away easily and finished the call. I need a visitor escorted out of the office. You idiot, she screamed. I loved you. I gave you the best years of my life. Logan, the security guard, arrived almost immediately. Ma'am, I need you to come with me. You don't understand, she yelled at him. Then she turned back to me. I'm giving you everything, my entire life. How can you refuse that? I remained silent, just watching. Logan led her to the elevator as her screams faded down the hall. She's only with you for your money. When you find out, it'll be too late. And then you'll remember that I was the one who really loved you. That was the last thing she said before the doors closed. I stood there, staring at the blank computer screen. I didn't feel anger or sadness. Just a firm calm, the certainty that a long, exhausting chapter had finally closed. I took out my phone and sent a text to Ethan. Amber showed up at the office. Had a meltdown. Got escorted out. A total mess. He replied instantly. Again? What did she expect? A happy ending with violins and fireworks. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because there was more truth in that one sentence than in the entire conversation I'd had with her. What she was looking for no longer existed. Who I was to her, I am no longer, and what she represented to me was buried a long time ago. The real victory was never about watching her fall. It was about getting back up and moving forward with my head held high, without ever looking back. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.